Good morning, Jessup. How's everyone doing? I'm going to go out here so I can actually see a few of you. So we are like right down to the end of it, aren't we? A few more days till Thanksgiving break. How do we feel about that? Are we hanging in there? Even the people in the front are like trying to stay awake today. So I'm actually working on in my dissertation in this season of life. So I will be writing over Thanksgiving. How many of you will be doing some schoolwork of some sort over Thanksgiving? Okay. How many of you will be doing absolutely none of that, even if you might need to, but because you just say, I have to stop? Okay, see, I think some people are afraid faculty are in the back because no one is raising their hand. Okay. Was that? Okay, I don't know. So I have two stories to start us off, and I have to apologize because they're both about like my kids and my wife, who is a large piece of wisdom in my life, said, John, like most of the people there don't have kids. They can't relate to this. And I'm like, but that's what I have, and so that's like half of my life. So I'm going to talk about them anyway, and then we'll go from there. But okay, so this is a clock. We're starting off easy, because it's close to Thanksgiving. So, these are those things that, we use before cell phones to tell time and call, so these are pretty innocuous for most people. They just kind of tell time. They don't do much else. But I don't know if that's me doing that or if I need to do something different. I'm going to move this out of my pocket so that it's not making noise. We're just really trying to keep you guys awake. Hold on. We'll just clip it there. Okay. No. All right, I'm just gonna keep going. But so clocks, pretty basic. But twice a year, something happens that for most people you actually celebrate. Like a few weeks ago, when I went to church, even the pastor was like, "Hey, daylight savings time is changing. Everyone gets an hour of sleep." And people celebrate. People feel rested. Let me tell you something. For parents, that is not true. We have a 1-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I just want to let you know that our 1-year-old cannot tell time. He doesn't look at this to schedule his life. So all that means is when, he's getting up at 6:30 or 7, suddenly when the time changes, he's getting up at 5:30 or 6. And he doesn't care that everyone else decided that this was a different time. And so suddenly, it means an hour less sleep. And so, we try everything. I'm like, okay, let's put him to bed an hour earlier. He still gets up at the same time. Let's try like feeding him later so that way he starts getting up later. That just means he gets up at 5:30, doesn't get food till 7, and is like yelling at me like, "Where's the food?" He doesn't say where's the food, but that's what I imagine he's saying. And then even, and then I'm in there, I'm like, maybe I'll pat his back and like calm him down. And like he just starts patting my arm, I don't know. So eventually you're just like, you're begging, you're pleading, and then do I need to use this now? Is that... Okay, whoa, just throw that back there. So eventually then, so we're begging and pleading, and then eventually we just say, fine, here's your banana, we're just gonna deal with it, maybe eventually this will change. So here's the deal. There are times when parenting, at least for me, is hard. It's not always easy, but there's also these really great moments, like when I'm reading to my 5-year-old at bedtime, and he wells up about some Bible story because he really cares about what's happening. Those moments are really special. Or when when we dress our 1-year-old up as a minion and watch him run around the house, like that's nice. Or the other night I was reading to my oldest and a bedtime story of the Christmas narrative, and he ends up in that moment asking a few questions. He's talking about, so Daddy, why, how is Jesus, what's the difference between God and Jesus? So we're talking about that, and then, so is there one God or many gods? And then he's like, how do babies get born? So we end up talking about, the Trinity, okay, monotheism and polytheism, okay. And then I say, okay, and buddy, that last question, you can ask your mom. So, so parenting can be both hard and awesome. But here's the thing. There are two ways of looking at any situation. One is an obligation that is placed on me, and another is that it's an opportunity because of what can happen in and through me. So let's talk about the other example here, also dealing with my kids. So our oldest is playing soccer for the first time. Yeah. And now we were really excited about him playing soccer, partially because, and I apologize for the people who play this in the room, partially because it's more exciting to watch than baseball for 4-year-olds. Okay, I'm sorry for the people who love baseball. It's just that 4-year-old baseball is a little bit slow, and 4-year-old soccer, it's just like this swarm of kids running back and forth. So as we're in this, though, it's really interesting because, so our oldest, soccer may not be his gift in life. And buddy, if you're watching this a few years later, I'm sorry. You are great at so many things, and I hope we make good choices in this. I don't know. But here's the thing. He seems to think that the way to play soccer, like the reason to play soccer is you get to watch the game from closer, like on the field. Because there's these things happening, and he's, and like people are running, and he's just kind of like watching, and like the ball comes close to him, and he like backs up so that people can get it, I don't want to get in the way of this. And I've even, in processing it with him, I'm like, so what's going on? He's like, well, he's really good at the game. Okay, like he's delegating. It's cool. So here's a confession. We actually, so one time after a game, we were planning on going to In-N-Out afterwards. Praise Jesus. And so we're like, hey, buddy, if you can kick the ball 10 times in this next half, we'll go to In-N-Out. Now, this is risky because we're already planning on going, and he might not do it. But so then, I don't know if bribery is a good parenting technique, but so like then he's out on the field, and he would like run, and then he'd like go in there and like kick it once, and then he'd stop and be like, 1. I don't know. But there was this time then where the game is tied. It's a tense game for 5-year-olds, and he's goalie. He like really wanted to be goalie. I'm like, are you sure? I want to be goalie. So the ball comes to it was mostly on the other side for most of it. It comes toward him, and there's this swarm of kids, and they're kicking. He's like at the goal, and he's like kicking it away. It's like and I'm like, after he finally kicks it away far enough, I'm like, hey, buddy, you can pick up the ball. Like you can use your hands when you're goalie. I know we've been saying the whole other time, don't, but you can do that. And he looks at me, and he's like, I didn't want to reach down there. Now, I'm probably with you, buddy. I probably would have done the same thing. But then, like, as we're talking, suddenly the ball starts coming again, but this time it's coming through the air. And he sees it, and he goes, no! And it bounces off his thigh and like bounces away. The whistle blows, the quarter's over. He blocked the goal. Everyone's cheering. It's like, yay! All because he's like, no. But and then I'm like, okay, heart attack averted. He made it. He did it. He didn't have a bad experience. But so my hope for him in soccer, if I have one, is that. I love you, buddy, is that he will get into, find himself in the middle of it enough to feel the excitement of it. Because part of it is when he's standing on the outside, all he sees is the risk. If I get in the middle of this, kids are getting knocked over, but as soon as he feels that excitement of, making the goal or blocking the goal or kind of being in the middle of it, it changes everything for him. Like he starts to feel something different about the game. And so I don't know where to, as a parent, like push, like, oh, it's just cool to have fun, or, oh, you really need to be good at this because you're a 5-year-old. I don't, but there's something about once he gets into the middle of it, he actually sees things differently. And I think it's the same that I said before. We can see things one of two ways. It can be an obligation or something that's put on us, or it can be an opportunity for what gets to happen in and through us. So he can see it as this thing that is only a risk and only negative, or he can see it as the opportunity for what it could be. Today I'm excited about the scripture that we're going to talk about because it's near and dear to my heart. It's one that continues to challenge me, and part of it is because I think that I'm drawn to simplicity, and part of it is because I think life can be really complex at times. And I don't know about you, but a lot of times if I have one thing to focus on, I can probably do that. If I have two, it gets a little dicey, and if there's more than that, it's a lost cause. And so sometimes life can feel that way, but also sometimes I think Scripture can feel complex or complicated. There's a lot there, and I think this is part of the reason that we get some culture wars in Christianity. It's the reason that someone can you can take one piece of Scripture that proves that red cups are bad if they don't have wreaths on them. And I can take another piece of Scripture that says, who cares? And we can argue on the internet and prove to everyone that Christians are exactly who they thought they were, hypothetically, or something like that. But so there's a lot in Scripture that we can pick and choose sometimes if we're not careful. But there are some really big themes in there that are so consistent that help focus us and help us to see, like, what is it that Christ is really calling us to? So that's what we're going to look at today, because we can look at something one way and get complexity, or we can look at another way and get simplicity or clarity. So this is a basin. It's actually a salad bowl, but it's what I could find. I don't have a basin in my house, but we're going to call this a basin. And this is a tool that Jesus used to reframe the mindsets of his disciples in his last hours on earth. So we're going to read from John 13. It says, "It was just before the Passover feast. Jesus knew that the time had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he now showed them the full extent of his love. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped the towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him." So at this point in the Gospel of John, the entire book shifts its tone. Some people even call it book 2 of the Gospel. It's really the beginning of the end, the beginning of the end of the story for Jesus. He's only has a short amount of time left with his disciples. And everything that he has done on earth is leading up to this point. These disciples have followed him. They've watched him. At times, they've completely missed the point of what he's doing. But once he's out of here, if this movement of God is going to continue, this little group is going to be its primary champions. So time may be short, but Jesus still has a few lessons left to teach them. It says Jesus also knew that God had put all things under his power. So we have the most powerful being on earth in this moment deciding what to do next. So he gets up in the middle of dinner. The room gets quiet. Peter probably wonders if Jesus is going to say something. John looks up to see what's happening. And he walks over to the corner by the door and picks up a dirty basin used for cleaning. Now, to kick things off, they're eating, so this is just not a sanitary thing to do. It's not something that would typically happen. And that basin is used for foot washing. So, that is actually such a lowly task that it wasn't even something that a Jewish slave would do. It was a task reserved for Gentile slaves or, because of the time, women or children. So Jesus takes off his cloak, lays it aside, wraps himself like a slave. I guarantee you an awkward silence filled the room, because this is the man they're following that they fully expect will overthrow the Roman Empire and usher them into positions of power any day now. And here he is, getting up, dressing like a slave, and doing something that they had never seen in their life another Jewish man do. I don't know how to put this in context for us. Maybe it's like John Jackson showing up to your apartment on a Sunday night, taking off his jacket and grabbing some cleaning supplies and going and cleaning that shower and that toilet that you haven't looked at for a while. And actually you know that you actually haven't looked at it since September 12th, because you and your roommate have this chore wheel, and they hadn't done the cleaning of the kitchen. And so you said, you know what, I'm not going to do my part either. And so there was like this silent waiting, that's happening, and this tension building for like 2 months. So this toilet is dirty.